Okay, Nick and Andy, we're at that time of the summer where the transfer window is about to shut. A lot of big deals have happened. Star players have been on the move. So let's give our analysis on who has won and lost the Premier League summer transfer window. This always excites, infuriates, upsets people in equal measures. So let's talk about who did the best business. Nick Mendola, I'm going to come to you first because I think there are a couple of contenders here, top 6 contenders who've done really well in this window. Kind of looking at Man United and Tottenham, who I think have had decent summer windows. But specifically, which clubs do you think have done really well this summer?
I like what United has done, and I think it's really important that we put an asterisk on Man United because we just don't know what's going on in terms of the Erik ten Hag system and where they're going, and it's really easy to judge clubs like this through the window of what we've been watching the past couple of years. But I like De Ligt. I like Mazraoui. The idea of Ugarte is fantastic. They have moved out some players as well, and there's a belief I have in the overall accumulation of talent they're making now that I didn't have a year ago. And I think that matters. Like, I really think the fact that you can look at a club and say, all right, there's the right age imprint. It isn't just a bunch of old guys holding them up. Like last year, we were leaning on Varane and Casemiro being the Varane and Casemiro 5 years ago. I don't feel like you're there now. And oddly enough, I think it puts a little bit more pressure on Ten Hag because there are less ugly pieces in misfit places.
Andy, when we look at sort of other teams who've done good business, maybe outside traditional top 6, we mentioned Tottenham. Obviously, that was, they're another team who've done decent business amongst the big boys. But I guess Brighton is the one team that stands out. Nick mentioned this before. Kadioglu, O'Reilly, Ruta, Minter, all coming in. They spent huge money this summer, and they all seem to just really fit the bill, and there's a clear plan and identity. And I guess that is kind of key to all this, right? You can have a big summer of spending, but if you're just spending it needlessly on players you don't really need and doesn't really fit the philosophy, but just because they're available and will make it work, then usually that ends in tears. But Brighton, again, probably the best run team in the Premier League for quite a long time now. And what they've done is smart, but also exciting, I would say, for the next few years for them, because then in a few years' time, these players are probably going to be the next McAllister or Caicedo, and they're just that conveyor belt of brilliance coming through down there at the Amex.
Yeah, it does seem Brighton's the best talent identifying team in the Premier League. They can look at a player and the skills that he has, the weaknesses that he has, and see, does that actually fit into our team? And that seems simple, but it doesn't seem like all Premier League clubs maybe do that have that in mind when they make a signing. And so everybody working in the same direction obviously has been huge for Brighton. To then go out and spend as much as they did this summer, I do worry a little bit. I can remember a time when Tottenham kind of bought a new team with the money for one player when Gareth Bale left about 10 years ago, and that didn't work out so well for Tottenham at the time. Brighton probably done a little bit better recruitment, I would say, at this point. Another team, though, that kind of around that same realm that I would like to point out and get a little love to for what they did this summer, I like what Brentford did as well. You go out and get Fabio Carvalho, who was looking really good in preseason for Liverpool, and it was clear that he's good enough to contribute to a team at or very near that level in the league. But there just wasn't minutes. And so they make kind of one of those shrewd signings, a good player, comfortable in the country, comfortable in the league, shouldn't have an adaptation period and should be able to come in and I think help them pretty quickly. And then also bringing in Sepp van den Berg at center back from also Liverpool, another player probably right on that fringe for Liverpool. And these are the market inefficiencies, if you will, that Brighton and Brentford have exploited a lot over the last handful of years and had so much success in the transfer market.
Nick, we're looking at another team who's won or done very well this summer, West Ham United. Yeah. I feel like it's kind of gone under the radar a little bit with the business they've done, but Julian Lopetegui coming in, different style of football, a lot of changes there. But Wan-Bissaka, Todibo, Fulkrug up top, Somerville out wide, Kilman at centre-back, Guillaume as well. They've made some great additions, and feel like we haven't talked about them enough. So, it's West Ham. They made a lot of signings over the years that haven't worked out, but it feels like there's, again, a plan and an idea here of how they're going to play. And they've kind of, in a rather balanced manner, upgraded most positions that they needed to upgrade this summer.
Right. And a good mix of players from abroad and players with Premier League experience. I love the Kilman move for that reason alone. And obviously, there's some familiarity as well in terms of what all the people that the manager knows back from his days at Wolves. And Todibo is a player that we have heard his name mentioned with the biggest clubs in Manchester, but we've seen him linked with Manchester United and Chelsea and Arsenal. So these are names that West Ham are not taking a gamble on, but they're not just strange reaches or big absolute overpays. They seem a little bit more educated, and I think that comes with the reputation of the boss. And we saw it with Wolves, who seem to be on the edge of it, that if he gets the investment, we might see some special things. And I just think it's the total package of an education and a philosophy and trying to make it work genuinely. And that's exciting for West Ham.
I'm going to chuck out another two teams, which, they haven't made many signings, but both Liverpool and Manchester City, the fact that they've been able to keep hold of most of their star players this summer when there was a lot of reports around, is Edison going to leave? Is Kevin De Bruyne going to leave Man City? And then for Liverpool, situations with Mohamed Salah, Van Dijk, others in the final year of their contract. Again, that's going to rumble on and be a storyline this season until they do sign a new deal. But just getting those situations kind of settled down and just having these star players there. And then some pretty bargain buys with Chiesa going to Liverpool and then Savinho and Gundogan going to Man City. I just think it's kind of a case of the strong get stronger. I mean, it's just the same as Arsenal as well. I think Arsenal, again, haven't really lost anybody that you would say is really going to hurt them. They've upgraded in defense of Calafiore, Moreno in midfield. I just kind of sensible business from all those big boys there, and it's not flashy. They haven't gone out and spent 100 million on a player like they have done in previous summers, but just sensible summer business from them. In terms of the losers, I mean, it's hard for us to say right now. It's only been a couple games into the season, but Nick, when we look at some of the teams who've struggled probably with business, Wolverhampton Wanderers, I'm a bit worried about them. Are you?
Yeah, big time. To lose a player like Kilman and Neto, I mean, you have to have a pretty significant scouting depth and acquisition people too, right? Like you have to get those moves over the line. So definitely concerned about Wolves, concerned about Newcastle United, because I think they have such a fantastic opportunity in front of them with not being in Europe this year. And Eddie Howe, and I'm going to put it on the manager here because I think it's pretty clear, just latching on to Guehi when he was priced so high. And I've just seen, it's one of those things where you see players move around you and you wonder whether or not the manager knows, right? Maxence Lacroix could go to Crystal Palace. He may even have by the time this video airs. And it was something like 15 million pounds. And I say, is Mark Guehi, even with an England tax, 55 million pounds better than him? Todibo was available. He had been linked. And I just think there's a danger with getting infatuated with one player. We saw it with Antony a couple of years ago at Manchester United, not to name one of the biggest busts of all time. But I think if you're a club that isn't in lockstep, and Newcastle does not seem in lockstep the way Eddie Howe talks, you can ruin a summer and ruin a magnificent chance to waltz back into the European picture.
Andy, who struggled in the window for you, mate?
Palace. I know they got a lot of money in, but you lose a player with the talent of Michael Elise. That Palace team last season was incredible when Elise was out, and then as soon as he came back and how it took off, and I know there was a managerial change and Glasner comes in, and it was probably the right timing contract-wise, I think, for them to maximize the fee that they were going to get from Bayern, and it always hurts to lose a talent of that quality. But they just really haven't gone out and replaced it. And you can't replace what he was to that team, but some of the production, I think they're going to be leaning on Eberechi Eze a lot this season, maybe a little bit more than, maybe is realistic. And unless Mateta continues to just perform over the top, over the top, over the top every single game. I really, really wonder, is there going to be enough goals for them to stay in the Premier League?
With Anderson walking out the door too.
Yeah.
He's been a sneaky under the radar, great Premier League center back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
And now if Gahey goes right at the end of the window, they have all this money, and what are they to do with it? There's a certain point in a transfer window when you are a team that has the player that somebody wants badly. You say, this is the date, figure it out by this date, get him or don't get him, because we also then have corresponding business that we have to do. We have a season coming up, and it doesn't feel like, kind of to go back to the point you guys were just making, nobody at Newcastle or Palace has really just taken hold of the reins and said, all right, I'll take control of this situation. We'll get this business done because it needs to get done. And so now we're to the last few hours of the window, and somebody might come out of it happy. They might get a player, but the other one's not.
yeah, no, it's really interesting there. And I think there's another couple of teams. We talked a lot about Chelsea all summer long, but arguably, depends what happens late in the window, because they are going to be very, very active on deadline day. But I'm not sure if this squad is stronger than the start of the summer. I mean, they've just added a lot more chaos, and I'm picking out one individual here, but is Dewsbury Hall a better player than Conor Gallagher? I don't think so. And basically, you swap in players like that, very like for like. You're adding lots of wingers. João Felix, Pedro Neto is a great player. I love him. So João Felix has had his moments over the years, but again, you're adding that to a team that already has 5 or 6 similar players, and I think you cannot say that Chelsea have done well in this window, no matter how it looks at the end of it, because of just what we talked about as a success for other teams, that there is no joined up thinking here, and all it does is create problems that are going to come back to bite them at some point, however many long-term contracts they dish out, like Andy and Nick have mentioned this week. At some point, that's going to come home to roost. And unless the rules change significantly, there's a huge problem brewing at Chelsea for all of the business that they've done this summer and the last couple of windows. So I also want to mention Everton. Concerned about them. Obviously, financial situation for them is not great. We know they're in the midst of, for them, hopefully, a takeover deal being confirmed in the coming weeks and months. But it's not left Sean Dyche in a great situation, and they were above par last season. They did really well to finish where they did with the points deductions and the squad that they had. And you thought, okay, well, this is the moment where you have to keep that together and just build on it. But they've regressed in terms of the squad for me. So I'm a bit concerned about Everton as well. But gents, that was really interesting to get your thoughts on the transfer window, summer business for all the clubs up and down the Premier League. Head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest as we wrap up the summer transfer window. We'll have grades, analysis, all the ins and outs for all 20 teams. There's been a lot of ins and outs this summer. It's kept us very, very busy. And it's going to be intriguing to see how it all plays out this season for every team up and down the Premier League.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host of NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And if you want even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock.